the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example.
That was then President Joe Biden in his 2021 inaugural address, emphasizing America's resilience on the global stage. A new book titled The Case for American Power echoes that sentiment and argues the nation's superiority in politics, economics, and culture is needed now more than ever in an increasingly dangerous and chaotic world. And the book's author, Washington Post columnist Shadi Hamid, joins us now. Shadi, thank you so much for being with us. You know, there was a time in the past where even talking about American exceptionalism would be frowned upon and would get catcalls from the back. Things have changed a little bit now when people understand, even our European allies, especially our European allies, understand that America as a force of good is badly needed in the world. And if we're not there, if there's a void, then sometimes chaos creeps into that void. Talk about your book and what inspired you to write it.
Yeah, so I think there's a big problem now. There's a kind of crisis of self-confidence. I mean, you're right that a lot of our partners realize our importance, but a lot of Americans are in this kind of mode of self-doubt. There's actually a remarkable Gallup poll that in the early 2000s, about 85% of Democrats were either extremely or very proud to be American. That number has dropped to 36% in 2025. So this is a real problem on the left, where people simply just don't believe in American power. They don't even believe in the idea of America. And I wanted to kind of offer a case to young people, to progressives and other skeptics, and say, America is worth fighting for. It's worth believing in, despite all of its faults. We're not perfect, but we're far preferable to the alternatives. And those alternatives are mainly China and Russia. So when you look at it in that more realistic way, right, you start to realize that we have a lot to be grateful for. But I worry, and I've had this experience when I say things like, I love America, to some of my liberal friends, they'll look at me like I'm crazy, like, Shadi, how can you say that?
Well, you look at what America has done, and I agree with you. There are people that, you know, say, oh, you're overly simplistic, say this to me. Oh, you're only saying that because, you know, you're a white man born in the middle of the 20th century and blah, blah. No, America has fed and freed more people than any other country on the planet. We've made terrible mistakes along the way. But again, like you said, when we're not out there trying to do better, to trying to move towards a more perfect union, things go sideways. And I'm always struck when I talk to leaders in regions that are sort of torn between dealing with China and dealing with the United States, dealing with Russia and dealing with the United States. And they will tell me flat out, you guys are more powerful, so we have to deal with you a lot of times. But man, China's a lot easier to deal with because they don't bother us about human rights. They don't ask us about how we're treating our workers. They don't ask questions that, and then they just say, we don't care about. We're in this for money, and the Chinese understand that. You Americans, you ask too many questions. You stick your nose in places that are none of your business, like human rights. The Chinese don't do that, and it's at that point where I go, I wish all of those people that are saying there's really no difference between the United States and every other country on the planet could hear the conversation I'm hearing right now, because China, Russia, other tyrannical countries, they think we're a pain in the ass because we do worry about human rights. We do worry about the sort of things, or at least we used to, the sort of things that, you know, defined U.S. foreign policy after World War II.
Yeah, I think you're right that people are sometimes annoyed, but that's part of what makes America great. The fact that not only do we have power, but we have a sense of moral purpose. And when you combine power and morality, you have a really unique mix that no other country has. We've been founded on that moral purpose from day one, even though we've been flawed in executing it until Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump, in some ways, is the first president who doesn't even pretend to have these higher aspirations and higher ideals. I hope that post-Donald Trump, we can return to that tradition. And I'll just say, when I was in the Middle East during the Arab Spring, when people were protesting for their freedom, they didn't look to China or Russia to come to their defense. They looked to the U.S. They knew the U.S. often falls short, but they still had a sense that maybe America would do the right thing. I was in Tahrir Square in Egypt, and people were hanging on Barack Obama's words, waiting to see what he would say. So I think we have to that is something to be proud of. And as a child of immigrants, I'm extremely proud that we are a democracy. My parents did not come from a democracy. They came from an authoritarian regime. And that's why I think someone like me can make this case a little bit better than, say, like a random white guy, you know.
Like me,
and that's
exactly.
Well, you're not Random Joe, but yeah.
Random Joe, exactly. Yeah, no, I get exactly what you're saying. And, you know, you bring up a great point. And Reverend Al, we're a big country. We have made big mistakes. Iraq, Vietnam. I can go down the list of the big mistakes we've made. But we've got a hell of a lot more things right. And up until the last couple of years, we've had our eyes on the prize. We've understood at least what values we're supposed to move toward. And it's so interesting. I love telling this story for people who, you know, talk about America and are critical of America. It's one thing, you know, like, we criticize the direction. We criticize our leaders. That's one of the things that makes us Americans. We're constantly fighting to move forward to a more perfect union. But I had a friend during the Iraq War who was from Turkey, and every day he was constantly attacking the United States. We're horrible this way. We're horrible that way. After about a year of it, I said, man, listen, nobody's keeping you here. If we're such an evil country, go back to Turkey. I've been listening to this every day for a year. If we're so bad, why are you still here? And he said, America, it's a lot like Hollywood movies. The bad guys always seem like they're winning. And in the end, somehow, some way, just barely, the good guys come through. And he talked about the civil rights movement. He talked about, you know, after Vietnam, the United States understanding its mistakes, after Watergate, the reforms put in place. And I just thought it's sort of a beautiful way to hear about this country from an outsider's perspective. We make mistakes, but he's kind of like Churchill, who said the United States will do the right thing after exhausting every other possibility.
No, there's no doubt that the history of this country has been to try and be challenged, to live up to the principles and values that it represented, and maybe never practice, but to force it to that practice of what it claimed it would stand for. When Martin Luther King said, live up to the true meaning of the words you say, which is why he went to the Lincoln Memorial with the I Have a Dream speech. The conflict has been making them live up to it. But Shahid, I think Shadi, I think the question I would raise to you, it brought me back to my youth, because when I grew up right after the post-King era, being mentored by some of his lieutenants, and there were forces in the movement that were saying they need to overthrow the government. We're against Vietnam. We don't need America. But the other powers in the world didn't even give us a sense of being able to protest. And they were worse on questions of civil liberties and civil rights. So my question to you is, as you've come to this conclusion in this book, you're not saying that we don't need to improve, but you are saying that compared to the alternatives, the things we're concerned about are not even on the table to be discussed.
Exactly. It's the very fact that we're a democracy that allows us to improve. And that's why I tell young folks who have given up hope in America, I say, look, if you don't like what we're doing abroad, and we have done a lot of terrible things, the Iraq War, supporting right-wing dictators in Latin America during the Cold War, there is that long record. But at least because we're a democracy, we're able to change our leaders and ask them to have a different kind of foreign policy that is more aligned with our values. That is a remarkable thing. We're not stuck. Just because we've done things in the bad things in the past doesn't mean we're doomed to repeat them. Compare that to China. If you have a Chinese citizen who doesn't like their foreign policy, there's no avenues for redress. There's no way to change that because there's just the leader, the dear leader, and he's the one who has full control. So we're always able to renew ourselves and self-correct. But the only way that happens is if young people and progressives stay in the game and don't exit politics altogether out of disillusion.
An important message there. The new book, The Case for American Power, is available now. Author and Washington Post columnist Shadi Hamid. Thank you so much, Shadi, for joining us today.